Good afternoon. You're very welcome to Final Year Matters Moving On. And today we have a very special guest who's joining us from the Dún Laoghaire Volunteer Centre, Clare Cryan. But let me first introduce my colleague, Louisa Keogh, who's going to introduce you to Clare, and then we'll let Clare take it away for her presentation. And we'll have plenty of time later for questions.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Yes, so we're really pleased to have Clare along with us here today. Clare's worked in the volunteer sector since 2015 and in the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown area since 2016. So she's really got a wealth of experience in this area as organisations and programme lead at the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Volunteer Centre. Clare works directly with non-profit organisations to support and strengthen their growth in their volunteer programmes. And so Clare's here today to do a presentation for us, and we'll be taking questions at the end. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Rebecca and Louisa, for having me. I'm delighted to be with you and to be chatting about all things volunteering today. So as Louisa mentioned, I'm going to kick off with a short presentation just to set the scene for our chat and set the scene of volunteering in Ireland. But then we're really looking forward to digging into some questions and just a general good old chat and chinwag. So
yeah. Take your time while you're doing that. I think that, I think for our graduates and for anyone in college, finding the time to volunteer can be challenging, but the benefits are really exciting. And that's kind of what we'll be talking about today.
Brilliant.
Great that we can see the screen perfectly. So I'm going to say and let you go on there, Clare.
Excellent. And maybe just a wee invitation from Louisa and Rebecca as well, that while I am going to do this wee presentation, we're always delighted to take questions as we go. So if there's things that you want to jump in and ask as we run through these few quick slides, then fire away. So what are we going to talk about today? Going to start by having a chat just quite generally about what is volunteering and why we might consider it. I'm going to discuss some tips and supports for getting started, and then also look at how we can get started. So look at some of the supports that are available to students or indeed anybody who's interested in volunteering. So to start with, what is volunteering? Have a definition up there that's pulled from the National Volunteering Strategy. So volunteering is any time willingly given, either formally or informally, for the common good and without financial gain. So really, it's the commitment of time and energy to benefit society, your local community, another individual, or another cause. The key part here is, I guess, that we're volunteering, as I said, time and energy. So we're given, but we're also going to be getting. So why do you want to volunteer? This is a really important question for us here in the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Volunteer Centre, because understanding this makes it easier to find a volunteer role that you're going to find fulfilling and satisfying. In addition, volunteering should always be a two-way process. It should be of benefit to the organisation or the cause that you're volunteering for, but it really crucially as well should be of benefit to you, so to the individual who is going to be volunteering. Motivations are personal, and they're extremely varied. So everyone's reason to volunteer might be a little bit different, but they are all valid reasons. I think this is so important that I love to dig into it a little bit more. So what are some of the motivations or the reasons that people start volunteering? For some, we hear this language a lot. I want to give back. I want to give back to my community or my society or the country that I'm living in. Another way of saying that maybe is I'm also passionate about a cause, whether that's environment, whether it's animal cruelty, whether it's addressing the homeless crisis. People might say, I really want to volunteer my time to take action about something that I care about. Other reasons: meeting new people, making new friends, building our connections. Really valid reason to volunteer. And this is one that shows up for people at all ages, all stages. So maybe somebody who has newly arrived in Ireland and doesn't know anybody, volunteering can be a really nice way to meet others in your community. Similarly, we'd have people maybe moving around the country for university. So if you're arriving to Dublin for the first time, you might not know too many people. Of course, you're going to meet people on campus and in your lectures, but volunteering can be another great way to meet others. Other times it shows up, not maybe so relevant for people in IIT, but maybe people taking parental leave, people who are retiring. Anytime we have that kind of change in circumstances, change in the people that we connect with, volunteering might be a nice opportunity. I want to gain a new skill or use an existing skill. So volunteering is a brilliant way for us to really get stuck in and doing something. That might be that you said, I'm really keen to learn, or I've been teaching myself to code, and I want to be able to apply that in a practical setting. I want to try and volunteer my time to assist a nonprofit with a bit of their website development or something like that. Or equally, we often have people who might say, I'm retired, I used to be an accountant, and I don't use that side of my brain anymore, and I really want to volunteer those existing skills that I have so they don't get rusty. And finally, another motivation there is to gain experience or to gain confidence. So for many of us, if we're maybe starting out in the world of work or getting ready to embark on a career, volunteering can be a really, really helpful way to get our foot on that ladder of experience, and to gain experience in an organisation, working with others, or working in a particular area. So this is just touching on some of the motivations that we hear fairly regularly. There's more beyond that. But for us, that really key question in thinking about why we volunteer can really help us to find successful volunteering roles and placements. So once we've examined our why do we want to volunteer, there's a few other things that we'd encourage individuals to have a little think about. Firstly, your availability. Think about how much time you'd like to spend volunteering. Is it a day a month, 1 hour a week, more than this, less than that? Remember just to factor in your other commitments. So what other things do you have to dedicate time to, whether it's college work, family, hobbies, employment? It's really important not to try to overcommit yourself when you're starting to volunteer. So do take stock of how much time you can give to volunteering. Secondly, really practical thing is the location. So how far are you willing to travel to volunteer? Will you be traveling by car, getting public transport? Just be practical when you're signing up to something, because traveling long distances to volunteer maybe every week might not be sustainable for you. Another thing to note maybe on location is that many volunteering opportunities are available online or virtually now. That would have always been the case, but we've seen a dramatic increase in online volunteering opportunities since COVID. Your skills and abilities. So reflect on what skills are you bringing to volunteering? Are there others that you'd like to develop? This goes back to what I was talking about previously in terms of motivations. And then finally, your interests. So what do you like doing, or what do you feel passionate about? And this might relate to a particular activity or a cause. So those 4 little maybe high-level questions can really help us to think about volunteering before we apply for an opportunity. And I encourage everyone to reflect on those before we sign up and show up for our volunteering experience with an organisation. A small note on what I like to call the skills versus interest trap is that maybe I'll use a little bit of an anecdote in this situation to describe what I mean here, is that we regularly have individuals who assess their skills only and not their interests. And so they look at what they can do and not what they want to do. I'm going to go back to the example of an accountant who came in to speak to us at one point, and he'd retired, and he said, well, look, I can do this for an organisation. But it turned out he'd done that all of his working life. He wanted to do something different. And that's why it's so important for us to reflect on our own personality and our own interests and individuality before we get started in volunteering opportunity. For people who maybe are attending IADT, who are students, again, I'd really just dig into thinking outside of your comfort zone and saying, what are the skills that I want to develop, but how does that also dovetail with really what I'm interested in? Because we really want to do our volunteer roles and be interested in them. Okay, going to move on to some practical things now. And that is, how do I find a volunteer role? So we've talked all about the why, the reflections that we're going to do before we start volunteering, but I've done all that. How do I find something to get started in? there's lots of resources available in Ireland. We're really strong in the ways that we involve volunteers. So I'm going to run through of some of the practical resources and assets that are available to you as a volunteer. So firstly, IVOL is the National Volunteering Database, and that is administered by local volunteer centres all around the country. So that's us. I work for the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Volunteer Centre, but there is a counterpart to the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Volunteer Centre in every single county. So you can get in touch with your local volunteer centre, no matter where you're based, whether it's here in Dublin or if it's another part of the country. And we are best placed to support you, to chat to you about your interests, your skills, your motivations, maybe make some recommendations or suggestions. And then we are also the team that are administering IVOL, which is that national volunteering database. So anybody can log on to ivol.ie to search for volunteering opportunities that are currently available. And there are hundreds of them. The service that we provide, I've given you a run through of it already. We maintain IVOL, and we also send regular communications. So here in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown, we send a weekly newsletter with a roundup of all of the volunteering opportunities that are available. And our staff, as I said, are there to support you. We also regularly run kind of specific volunteering initiatives. So here in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown, we run a program called the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Community Volunteers, and this provides event volunteering and also volunteering in response to specific emergencies. So we actually have an absolutely wonderful cohort of volunteers who make up our community volunteers team, and we provide them training, social connection, and then when a once-off role comes up, we push it out to that whole group. So you can also sign up to be a community volunteer if events are your gig. Of course, there's lots of other supports and services across Ireland. So I think if people are interested in volunteering, ActiveLink is another great place to look to access volunteering opportunities. They have a bulletin board online, and they also send a fortnightly newsletter. That's also a brilliant resource if people are looking for jobs in the nonprofit sector. Thirdly, Board Match. So Board Match specialises in nonprofit board recruitment. So to take a step back, every single charity in Ireland has a board of directors or a board of trustees, and every one of those board of trustees is a volunteer. So Board Match really facilitates organisations to advertise board roles that they have available, and then people who are interested in volunteering as a board member can browse and apply for board roles via Board Match. And then finally, studentvolunteer.ie is an online resource, again, that aggregates and kind of collates volunteering opportunities available specifically for students. Now, I had a little look. I'm not too sure if IADT are signed up for that yet, but that definitely is a resource that could be just worth checking out as well. Okay, so we've talked all about why we want to volunteer, some considerations, where I go to find volunteering opportunities, but we have not at all touched on what can I do. So let's talk about the practicalities of volunteering in Ireland. What types of roles are available and what organisations are they with? This is the part that is so hard for me to do justice to the huge variety and remit of things that are out there. So to begin to illustrate it slightly, I had a look at IVOL, the National Volunteering Database, to take a snapshot of what's up there right now in July 2023. As I mentioned earlier, there are hundreds of opportunities, but a few that caught my eye today were that Culture Night Dublin, which takes place in September. They're looking for social media volunteers. The Joyce Tower Museum in Sandy Cove is based out of the Martello Tower that is featured in Ulysses. They're looking for volunteer tour guides to help out every week. Making Connections, they run an intergenerational befriending service. So they support older people in our communities to help them stay connected, and they're looking for befriending volunteers to go visit an older person. Blackrock Meals on Wheels, looking for kitchen helpers. Underground Cinema Festival, so this is a short-term role. They're looking for people to help to document their festival in September and October. DCU Water Institute, which I had never heard of before, they're looking for citizen scientists to help monitor water quality in local streams, and what that looks like is going to your local stream once a month to collect a water sample and input data on your phone. So this just begins, hopefully, to highlight the fact that I can't do justice to the wonderfully creative volunteering opportunities that are happening all across Ireland today. So I like to say that when someone asks, what can I do as a volunteer? I tell them you can do anything and you can do everything that you can imagine. It's just a case of logging on, seeing what's out there and finding something that, again, fits your skills and your interests. What to expect when you apply? I think that's something that Louisa and I and Rebecca might chat about a little bit later. So I'm going to return to this one. But maybe in summary and to wrap up, what are the benefits of volunteering, specifically as a student? And I'd like to reflect on maybe my personal journey in volunteering for this. I studied science in University College Dublin, and I didn't love my degree. I didn't quite have the foresight maybe to look at changing to a different subject, so I stuck with it. But I found university at a certain point kind of tough going. And about halfway through my degree, I happened kind of by pure fluke to sign up to join the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And I happened to join them on a weekly soup run. So I went along to give it a go. And what does a soup run look like? We met as a group in Dublin city centre. We nipped off to one of the local hostel, made up some soup, some sandwiches, and we were doing a wee walk around the city centre, checking in with people who were sleeping rough to offer them a cup of tea, something warm, but really to have a chat as well and connect socially and make sure that they were seen and heard. And that first soup run that I attended, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed connecting with other volunteers. I felt that I was making a very small little difference and doing something good with my Thursday evening. And I really enjoyed connecting with the individuals who we were supporting. So the mostly lads that we were talking to. And I got the bug. I said, I want to do that again. And I did. I volunteered weekly on a weekly soup run for the guts of a semester. And the semester after that. And then I got a little bit more involved. I said, well, look, I'll be the coordinator for one of the Thursday the run. It happened a few times a week. And I got more and more involved. And I stuck with it because I managed to meet this lovely group of people. I found something that I was really interested in. And I could see that was really benefiting me. Ultimately, it definitely made me stay in college. It gave me a reason to kind of stay in UCD and show up and build connection on campus. And I'm really glad that I stuck with it. So a bit of a summary slide here of some of these benefits that we can get. Meet new people. You can see from my experience, I had this opportunity to meet new friends. Grow your network. I also had this wonderful opportunity to meet other people in that bigger organisation of St. Vincent de Paul. I learned more about the non-profit sector, and ultimately that helped me to say, that's something that I want to do as a career. I want to go in and I want to work in high impact roles. And by volunteering as a soup run during university, it helped me to kind of get the foot in the door with that. I was leaving my degree, which was in science, general science, having had some little bit of experience in the sector that I wanted to go into. I had this brilliant opportunity to develop skills, both practical, but also those really important soft skills. So I was exposed to working as part of a team. I had, an opportunity to improve my communication skills. And these were also all things that I could use in my interviews later on. Most importantly, I think for me, is I had an opportunity to stay curious, to really test what was I interested in and have a bit of a laugh along the way as well. So that wraps up maybe my positioning statement on volunteering from the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Volunteer Centre. Hopefully I've given you some reasons to think about it, why you might consider volunteering, and some practical resources as well to get you started. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, jump back on with Rebecca.
That was fantastic. I think Kira might have just jumped off the call there for a second, but I'm sure she'll be back shortly. Fantastic. I mean, while we're waiting for her, it's funny. I have a history of volunteering as well, but mine was a little bit different. When I was younger, we did do volunteering, and I always enjoyed it. But then when I became a rebellious teen in the States and here as well, I know a lot of people would be driving, and we'd start pretty early at like 15, 16. And I got myself into a little bit of a pickle. Will I share this, Louise? I think I've told you this.
I'll share it.
Yeah, I got some parking tickets, and those parking tickets were starting to mount a little bit. Good. Claire's back. I'm just in the middle of a story of why I started volunteering. So anyway.
Oh, so sorry. I just hit leave instead of stop sharing.
No worries, no worries. But so what happened was that I got into a situation where I had to go to court. And of course, I opted for the community service. And the community service, I started working, this was in the 1980s. This was not today or yesterday. I was working as one of the support line workers in the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. And that was a pivotal experience in my life. And it wouldn't have happened had I not broke the law. No, had I not not volunteered, because I hadn't had any exposure into that world. And it really, just to echo what Claire was saying, there's so much that I benefited from. I met some incredible people that became part of a community, and I learned so much about other people's ways of living, which made a huge difference to my empathy. And then when I was able to, when I was going for other job interviews, that was always something they mentioned. Oh, I see you volunteered at the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. What was that experience like? So do you know what I mean? It was a talking point for the interviewer. And I think that's really important, because you're going to be coming out of college, you're going to have your 2-1 or your 1-1 or your whatever. So is everybody else, to be honest with you. So what is it that how can you express yourself on paper in the first instance that shows your unique interests and how, what your kind of way of looking at the world is? And I know that volunteering is held in extremely high esteem here in Ireland. It's almost a way of life. You are probably the most generous people on the planet, and well known for that. So I was interested in what you were saying there, Claire, because I didn't know that there's different boards that you can volunteer to serve on, all these different things. So I'm learning all the time too. And do you want to talk a little bit about the process of going about? Because I think there is, most organizations, am I right in saying, will train you. You're not going to have to just walk in off the street and start doing this. You'll be trained. You'll be told exactly, what the parameters are, what the ethos of the organization is, all these sort of things. So maybe you might talk a little bit about those next steps, and just to put people at ease that they're not going to have to walk off the street and start, volunteering.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really a good thing to chat about, to be honest, because what we find is that every single role, volunteer role and organization is different, right? And so every single role and organization will also have a different process for screening, selecting and onboarding new volunteers. So might draw on a few examples so to kind of really illustrate what that practically can look like. So some volunteer roles, we call them, often refer to them as sign up and show up. So these are things like the volunteering at an event, or maybe the bag pack in a supermarket. They're the really visible volunteer roles that we all often know and see. And what I would say with those is often it is a case of signing up, maybe giving some very general details about yourself, having a quick check-in with the organization, and then showing up on the day. Even on that once-off volunteer role, you are going to be shown what to do, or you should be shown what to do by your volunteer coordinator or whoever's hosting that opportunity. So that might look like half-hour volunteer briefing on the day. Now, that's sign up and show up. So that's maybe the quickest form of volunteering that we can do. And as a result, the kind of screening and onboarding is reflected in that role. Of course, we have roles that are much bigger commitments and also need to have much more involved screening, selection and training processes. So maybe to go to the other end of the spectrum, let's look at volunteers who are maybe helpline volunteers on mental health charities. Of course, firstly, the organisation really needs to ensure that they are bringing on volunteers that are going to be the right fit for a volunteer role. And fit goes two ways. So fit has to be right for the volunteer and the organisation. So what could you expect if you're signing up to a role like that? What we would typically see is there might be a wee application form first. So you'd be filling in some of your own personal details, also your motivations, why you want to volunteer, what you could be bringing to a volunteer role. Typically, that might be followed up by a wee interview. Sometimes for some organisations that can take the form of a really informal chat. Rebecca, Louisa, come on in for a meeting at this time. We're going to sit down, we're going to have a chat about the role. Other times it might look a little bit more formal. And then from there, depending again on the nature of the role, sometimes we could look at a few additional measures like Garda vetting. Yeah. So we always get a lot of questions. What is Garda vetting? And essentially what that means is if you're going to be volunteering with a young person or so under 18 or a vulnerable adult, there's a process in Ireland where an organisation does have to conduct Garda vetting, which would roughly translate as a police check on individuals who are wanting to volunteer. That does not mean that if for any reason that you have, a disclosure or you have maybe conviction, that doesn't mean that you can't volunteer. But every single organisation will have a policy about maybe what types of convictions are that are still suitable. For example, if someone has a traffic offence from 3 years ago, look, an organisation will talk to people about that, but really what it comes down to there is safeguarding and making sure that the people they work with are going to be kept safe.
It's not that arduous either. I mean, I've gone through that. It's the only thing you do need to, when you get to be, you probably can already because you guys are mostly pretty young, but just remembering all the addresses in which you've lived. For me, that's a little challenging because I've been a rover. Yeah, I've been a couple places. I'm thinking, what was the street number on the house that I was living in when I was going to undergrad? You know what I mean? Those things can be challenging. So luckily, I have a good. That's the toughest thing about it. Really, it's just
really reform.
Yeah,
that's it. And what I always encourage people to know is that regardless of what an application process looks like within an organisation, whether it involves Garda vetting or not, the organisation is always there to support you along the way for getting started with them. So sometimes people can be really nervous and they say, I have to do an interview for a volunteer role, and we can get the frighteners because of that. But actually organizations, they really want you to succeed. They want you to volunteer with them. So they're always there as a resource and an asset to chat to about that application process,
It's excellent process. It's a really good practice for job interviews too, because they're not dissimilar in a lot of ways. I think you were going to chime in on that, Louisa, because I think that's the thing. I mean, part of what this program, the FIMMO program, is about is preparing people for life outside of college, which is wonderful. But that doing things that are kind of they're high impact because they mean a lot to you and they mean a lot to the organization. And that's the way to look at them. But that impact that you can make in someone else's life is extraordinarily rewarding for you as an individual, and obviously the organization benefits as well. But it's also for you to be able to, try new things and work with a different group of people and, have that experience and to build your confidence in these different experiences, I think, as well,
Yeah, absolutely. And that piece, build your confidence, I love, Rebecca, and also the skills piece, because, when we talk about building skills, sometimes we can go down two routes. We can say, well, we can build really practical skills. So, for example, if someone is studying towards a degree in communications, I can use my build practical skills by volunteering to assist a nonprofit with their social media, for example. I'm going to do an hour of helping them prep their social media posts because they don't know how to do that. So you have this opportunity to gain confidence in the skills that you've been studying as part of your degree. But then also we do have access to building all of these soft skills that we all need in our personal, but also in our work lives. So whether it's teamwork, communication, problem solving, it's a win-win in that we get to build more of those skills, but we also build the examples that we can speak about when we attend an interview, or that we can put on our LinkedIn, for example. That's another thing. There's a big section at the bottom of your LinkedIn page to populate with volunteering opportunities and also skills. So speak to your volunteering in those sections.
Absolutely. I think there's another question there, Louisa, that you wanted to ask. Is there?
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, is there a kind of baseline application that folks do? Am I right in thinking that they kind of build a profile on the database that they can use, or as I know for each business or sector, there might be more specific, like you were saying, with the application forms, the interviews, but is there a kind of baseline that people can expect to be asked for when they're applying?
Yeah, so really good question, Louisa. So I guess I highlighted a few different services during the presentation, and some offer that and some don't. So for the IVOL, the National Volunteering Database, and that's maybe the resource that I work on, what we actually are focused on there is volunteer referral. So what we're trying to do is put the volunteer and the organisation in contact. So when an individual registers with IVOL, the National Volunteering Database, they can create a profile there, and they can use that to apply for opportunities and, you know, track their applications. When I say track applications, look at their maybe the history of what they've applied for. They can log volunteer hours and things like that. But really what we're focused on is the referral. So when someone expresses an interest, we put the two parties in contact, and then it's over to you guys to take it from there. So in answer to your question, if you're using IVOL, it's not that the first part of the application is streamlined, because we know it's so important for that it's tailored for each individual volunteering opportunity. That said, for initiatives like Board Match, where there's, you know, a board roles are all of similar type, you know, and that bio and being able to kind of log your skills is maybe much more relevant for board roles. So I believe, I think I've used Board Match myself, so I believe there is the opportunity there to maybe upload your CV and to have a bit more information on file that can be browsed by organisations, but don't quote me on that one. That's an invitation for people to log on, sign up for Board Match and experience that for themselves. And please do as well sign up for IVOL, the volunteering database, to kind of access that and browse what's available.
I'm actually I've signed up for them, and I get a monthly newsletter of different opportunities that are out there for people, and it's as you say, there's just such diverse roles. I love, what did you say, the kind of, you kind of basically sign up, show up. I think that's great, you know, for whatever the event is. And then there's longer term. So you might, as a student, because I know how busy, I mean, particularly in your penultimate years of it's hard to kind of go, oh, but you know, it's kind of a great sort of something you're doing for yourself that's outside of your degree. So that really feeds, you know, it's actually starting you on your pathway for, you know, being out. Yeah,
and I think as well, I think it kind of feeds your life experience. So it will feed into your assignments when you're doing your final year project. It really takes you out of the mindset that you've been in for the 4 years or 3 years of your degree and says, okay, so there's a wider world out there. How can I marry the two? You know, how can I really make the most of this experience in volunteering? And yeah, I think it's very enriching for sure.
You volunteered, haven't you, Louisa?
I do indeed, yeah. I volunteered after college and haven't had this chat. I really wish I kind of sunk my teeth into it sooner. But I volunteer here in Wexford with the Volunteer Centre with their social media, which has been really, really cool. Because it's a personal interest of mine, and so it's a real pleasure, and I get to meet new people, and you know, so yeah, I really, really enjoy the experience. But yeah, I literally just saw a poster on the website, went in for a chat, so it was very much an informal thing, but it was really interesting to learn, because I've lived in Wexford my whole life and I had no idea it was there. And then it's kind of when you know you're in on the secret, you know, that way.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's like it opens your mind to the world, and I think particularly because you are so focused on study, and particularly in the later years of your study, that it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of go, hey, there is life beyond this, and I want to be fine. I'm not only going to be fine, I'm going to rock it, because you know I've done this, I've done that, and you know I don't know. I think it's a mind expanding experience for people, and I know that it's hard to find the time, but you know, you can find something that's really low impact in terms of time, just, you know, little bits and bobs, and kind of keep an eye, follow, you know, to be honest with you, you're going to be following people probably on LinkedIn and companies and see what's going on. And there may be volunteering opportunities that come in to play within some, certainly within the industry that you'd like to be involved. Sometimes that's kind of tough, because I noticed, Claire, there was a thing about, you know, they wanted to document the film the Underground Film the cinema the festival, sorry. And it's funny because our film students are constantly asked to do freebies, and they're like, but this is kind of like, I have enough practice. Much better for somebody who's doing psychology, or some, who have a passion about film, who don't have that opportunity to come in there and to, or even in business, and to be that volunteer, because then you're building your own portfolio. And I think a lot of times companies target our film and television students, which are, they're great, they're amazing, but we also have a lot of other media students and people that are fascinated by media in a load of different degrees. So to me, it's like, if I was doing the same thing that I do every day as a volunteer, I don't know that that would be as fulfilling as something that was different, that kind of just allowed me to grow in a different direction, and was giving back to the community in a way that was really important. So don't think you have to do what you're what you're studying as a volunteer role. And it's funny because even I know people that have done film and television degrees, and they volunteer for something completely different, and now they're working in a different, with those skill sets that they bring with them. So it's a marvelous, I think it's a marvelous way to test yourself, to obviously to give back to community, and I think it's a really important thing. But I also wanted to, from the other point of view, because I know we do have a lot of students in their final years who have research projects, and those research projects may involve, human research. It sounds terrible, like interviewees or surveys or this sort of thing, which obviously you need your ethics approval within your grouping, within the department. But how would someone go about finding volunteers to take part in a college project?
Yeah, that's super. So what I might do is just share my screen very quickly, just to show you. And I promise I won't leave the call this time.
That's okay. I can tell another story from
no.
my community service days. It was a choice of that or a fine, and I had no money, so it was definitely going to be.
You know what? Since I've rejoined, my computer's fighting me, so I'm not going to bother sharing it. But essentially, to answer your question, Rebecca, I'd direct people maybe towards our website in the first interest, which is volunteer.dlr.ie. So we have focused a lot today on maybe our service to volunteers, the fact that the Volunteer Centre supports individuals to access and get started in volunteering. Yeah. The whole other half of what we do is we support nonprofit organisations to find and involve volunteers. So when you speak there, Rebecca, about IAGT schools involving volunteers, absolutely, that's something that we actually can help in the Volunteer Centre with. So what I would encourage people to do is actually to reach out to myself directly. I'm the organisation's lead here in the Volunteer Centre, and that's my bread and butter. I chat to people about how they advertise for volunteers, how they reach audiences of people who might be able to volunteer with them. One option is that we can host volunteering opportunities on iVol if they're kind of appropriate and relevant. The big disclaimer for us always is that the opportunities listed on iVol are always with, not for non-profit or community good, but certainly the research and work that IAGT would do would fall under that, of course. So IAGT is already registered with us as an organisation. So when you log onto iVol or the Volunteer Centre website, we have this lovely tab which is Find Volunteers, and there individuals who are recruiting volunteers can input all of the details of the volunteering opportunity, or maybe the research that they're conducting, where the volunteering opportunity is available. Add all that in. We review it, and then if appropriate, we can give some feedback and tips and advice, and then ultimately activate that and advertise it on iVol.
So how long would that process take? So if you were doing a research project, say that you're finishing up in April, you probably want to be chatting with y'all in November, December, earlier on, just to kind of get the ball rolling, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always recommend reaching out to us as early as you can, at least to have a chat about the process, just to maybe decide if it's the right fit. We would have some kind of criteria, and we're also firming those up around kind of research roles that we can advertise and things like that. So we're always just keen to make sure that to start the conversation early, so that people aren't stuck or surprised if for any reason there's things we need to look into.
Well, that's the thing. It's actually just, say, for example, a survey that's going to be going out. Do you facilitate something like that? Looking for volunteers to fill out a survey or to come in to do interviews about, an experience of, let's say, someone's doing something on smoking and vaping, and they wanted to interview people. We usually would be dealing with people within the college, but I think there is a broader reach that is available, if appropriate, that might be of interest to our students and our postgrads certainly as well.
Yeah, so we've typically supported postgrads, so we'd have, and maybe we need to maybe look at and that's maybe something for a job for us to do afterwards, is we are kind of forming some criteria about what types of research studies that we can kind of post. But yeah, absolutely. So we would have had a number actually of postdoctorate and kind of lecturers post all three that you mentioned there, Rebecca. So sometimes there have been surveys hosted. There was a lot of research that went on during COVID-19 looking at the impact of COVID. So there was a lot of calls for people to complete surveys on their experiences that we hosted during that time. Sometimes we have really specific volunteering opportunities. For example, with some of the physiotherapy schools, where somebody might need to go in and actually participate in a movement test or a variety of different things. We'd also have seen, drawing on UCD here, a UCD School of Psychology often post roles with us for exactly that, things like interviews and the like, Rebecca. So it's an area, to be honest, that we are probably, that we have seen always a number of those opportunities registered and advertised through us, but we probably are seeing a bit more of them coming through now, and we are just looking at firming up a few criteria around that. But really always delighted to have the interest from people and to figure out how we can support and work with them. And also our website has an organisation resource hub. So while we don't necessarily have resources that are specifically pitched at people who are seeking volunteer research participants, but there's lots of kind of helpful tips and information there around volunteering and involving volunteers generally, which still can be very helpful if you are thinking about, listing an advertisement. How do we write an effective and attractive volunteer ad? How do we write a role description? And they're all important things maybe to consider, even if you are involving volunteers in research.
That's fantastic. I think all of those links that you've talked about today, Louisa, will have on our FYMMO social media, and that was fantastic. I really enjoyed speaking with you and just learning more, because it is an amazing opportunity for people. It benefits people in so many different ways. So I thank you, Claire, and Louisa. I'll let you do closing notes. You might have something to share about upcoming in FYMMO in the new year, or whatever's on the agenda for you.
Yes. So I want to thank you very, very much, Claire, for joining us. I really enjoyed that chat, and I think the students will as well. I think it's a really invaluable resource for them to have. And as Rebecca said, all the links that you mentioned will be up on our sites as well. And as for FYMMO, we'll be doing a welcome back week. I would say at the end of October at this stage, maybe end of September is looking like the end of October. But really to just get our name out there and to make sure all of our students are aware of what's going on in the career space, what's going on in the student experience space. So keep an eye out for our green logo, and we'll be telling you all about ourselves and maybe popping into classrooms as well to let you know what's going on. But yes, thank you very, very much, and keep an eye on our socials as well for all things FYMMO coming up.
Absolutely. Claire, thank you so much. And thanks so much. You guys do great work. Thank you very much for taking the time to chatting with us today.
Thanks for having us. And if I could leave everyone with like one parting suggestion, is just to give it a try. As Rebecca said, there's things that are, you can commit to 1 hour once off. Just log on, have a little look around, give it a try, because you might well catch the bug. So.
Absolutely. I certainly did. And so did you. That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.